Have you ever wondered what America tasted like before fast food took over, long before drive-thrus and deep fryers? Native tribes crafted meals that nourished body, spirit, and land, recipes born from fire, rivers, and ritual. But somewhere along the way, we forgot those sacred flavors, until now. In this video, we're traveling back through 30 forgotten native dishes, each one a story of survival and soul. Stay with us till the end, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and help keep these ancestral stories alive. 1. Three Sisters stew picture, a clay pot simmering over an open fire somewhere in the rolling hills of the northeast woodlands. The air smells of roasted corn and damp earth. Inside the pot, three humble ingredients: corn, beans, and squash come together as one. To the Iroquois, they weren't just crops, they were sisters, each protecting and feeding the other. Corn grew tall to support the beans fixed the soil's strength, and the squash's broad leaves shaded the ground to hold in life-giving moisture. Every bowl of Three Sisters stew told a story of balance and community. Families gathered around fires, passing the pot from hand to hand, the rich aroma rising like a prayer for the harvest. The taste was earthy, sweet, and deeply comforting, a reflection of the land itself. But as industrial farming took over in the 20th century, the sisters' voices grew faint. Convenience replaced ceremony. Canned soups replaced heritage. Still in native kitchens today, some elders are teaching young hands to plant the sisters again, to remember that food was once a conversation between earth and people. It makes you wonder, when did we forget that the best meals are those that nourish both body and spirit? 2. Pemmican. Imagine the wide, endless plains under a crimson sunset, the wind carrying the scent of smoke, sage, and drying meat. Here, long before freezers or store shelves, the Plains tribes mastered a food that could outlast the harshest winter pemmican. Made from dried buffalo or venison, pounded to powder, mixed with melted fat and crushed wild berries, it was both nourishment and medicine, strength and memory. Warriors carried it into hunts, travelers packed it for journeys that stretched beyond the horizon. Each handful was a symbol of survival, dense, sweet, and savory all at once. The fat sealed in life, the berries gave energy, the meat carried the soul of the buffalo. Elders taught that eating pemmican was sharing the spirit of the hunt itself. When settlers and traders discovered its power, they adopted it too, and soon the recipe traveled from tribal camps to fur trading posts and frontier towns. Yet with the rise of processed foods, its place faded, tucked away in museum cases and family stories. Today, a few native chefs are reviving it, reminding America that true endurance was once built from earth fire and gratitude. If you're enjoying this journey through forgotten flavors, hit like and subscribe for more. 3. Wild rice and cranberry pilaf. Close your eyes and drift to the still lakes of the Great North, where the morning mist clings to cattails and paddles slice softly through the water. For the Ojibwe people, harvesting wild rice or manuman the good berry was a sacred ceremony, not just a chore. Families gathered in birch canoes, gently knocking the golden grains into baskets as songs of thanks floated over the lake. Once dried and roasted, the rice was cooked with tart cranberries, forming a dish that carried the taste of both water and forest. Wild rice and cranberry pilaf was more than food. It was a prayer for balance. The nutty rice and ruby fruit danced between sweet and earthy, echoing the harmony between humans and nature. For generations, this dish fed both body and soul, connecting people to the spirit of the lakes. But as commercial agriculture spread, true wild rice nearly vanished, replaced by hybrid fields far from the sacred waters. Still, each autumn, a few Ojibwe families return to the canoes, continuing the ancient rhythm. Do you remember a food that connects you to your homeland the way manuman connects the Ojibwe to theirs? 4. Cedar plank salmon, the Pacific Northwest dense forests, cold rivers, and cedar trees towering toward the clouds. Long before fine restaurants copied the idea, the coastal tribes placed salmon fillets upon wet cedar boards, setting them near open flames. The wood smoke kissed the fish with a flavor both earthy and divine. It wasn't simply cooking, it was ceremony. Each salmon honored the cycle of life, the return from sea to river, and the people who waited to receive its gift. Families gathered as the aroma mingled with sea air, elders telling stories of the first salmon spirit who gave himself so humans would live. The taste, rich, smoky, slightly sweet, lingered like a blessing. Every bite reminded the people of gratitude. In the industrial age, convenience stripped away this reverence. Canned fish replaced cedar smoke, efficiency replaced patience. Yet many native chefs now revive the old ways, blending tradition with artful presentation. When you taste cedar plank salmon today, you're not just tasting fish, you're tasting the forest, the fire, and a story that never died. 5. Navajo blue corn pancakes. Somewhere in the sun-baked deserts of the Southwest, the scent of roasted blue corn fills the morning air. Ground from heirloom kernels and mixed with water, honey, and a hint of ash for color, these pancakes were once a quiet symbol of the Navajo people's endurance. Blue corn represented the sacred direction of the West, the place of dusk, reflection, and renewal. Cooked on a flat stone or cast iron pan, each cake sizzled into a soft violet hue, slightly nutty, faintly sweet. Mothers flipped them with wooden paddles, children waiting beside the fire. Honey dripped down the edges, sunlight glinting off its golden threads. But modern diets and refined flour pushed blue corn aside, leaving only memories of its earthy beauty. Now a slow revival stirs in Navajo country families grinding their own meal again, teaching children the songs that once accompanied the harvest. Blue corn isn't just food. It's a color of faith, a reminder that even in hardship, beauty remains. 6. Bison stew. In the wide grasslands once ruled by thundering herds, bison stew simmered at the center of life. The Lakota, Cheyenne, and Blackfoot people saw the buffalo not merely as meat, but as a brother, provider of warmth, tools, shelter, and spirit. When the stew pot hung above the fire, it carried the essence of an entire way of being. Chunks of tender bison meat mingled with roots, wild onions, and sage, filling the night air with rich, smoky perfume. Families gathered close, hands outstretched toward both heat and heritage. Every spoonful was gratitude for the hunt, the land, the breath of the animal who had given its life. Then came the 19th century, when rifles and greed drove the herds to near extinction. With them went the heartbeat of a people's sustenance. Yet today, as native ranchers restore bison herds across the plains, the stew returns to its rightful place, not as nostalgia, but as rebirth. Your comments keep these memories alive. Share what dishes from your own roots deserve to be remembered. 7. Acorn bread. Beneath the oak canopies of old California families once gathered fallen acorns by the basketful. Each nut carried a promise of nourishment, but also of patience, for acorns were bitter and required care. Women pounded them into meal, rinsed away the tannins in running streams, then mixed the soft flour with water and honey. Baked in clay or wrapped in leaves, acorn bread emerged dense, earthy, and fragrant, a humble feast that could sustain a village. It was more than bread, it was the rhythm of life. The oaks gave food, the streams cleansed it, and the fire transformed it, a perfect balance between people and the land. When wheat flour arrived through trade, acorn bread slowly disappeared, dismissed as poor food. Yet its story whispers in the wind, carried by elders who still gather acorns each fall. Taste it once, and you'll understand simplicity can hold centuries of wisdom. 8. Mesquite bean flour cookies. Down in the sun-scorched southwest, where desert winds paint the mesas red, the mesquite tree blooms quietly with pale yellow pods. The people of the Sonoran Desert knew their worth. Ground into fine flour, these beans produced a natural sweetness, low in sugar, high in soul. Mixed with water, wild honey, and a touch of ash for balance, they became golden brown cookies baked over stone or in clay ovens. The scent was unlike any other smoky caramel, with a whisper of the desert bloom. Children would wait for them to cool, breaking one apart to find warmth still trapped inside. When processed sugar took over American kitchens, mesquite disappeared from memory, its trees cut for charcoal instead of nourishment. But now nutritionists call it a superfood, and native bakers reclaim it as ancestral power. Every bite of a mesquite cookie carries two stories, one of survival and one of return. 9. Chokecherry pudding. The chokecherry, small, dark, and slightly bitter, was once treasured across the Great Plain. Gathered in late summer, it was crushed, seeded, and cooked slowly with honey or maple syrup until it thickened into a deep crimson pudding. To the Lakota and Arapaho, this dish symbolized both endurance and joy, a reward after long days of labor. When served in wooden bowls, the pudding's glossy surface reflected the firelight like a pool of sunset. Its taste balanced tartness with sweetness, reminding people that life too was made of both. As refined sugar and imported fruits replaced the native harvest, chokecherries lost their place at the table. Yet they never vanished completely. Wild groves still bloom, waiting for hands that remember. Do these first 9 dishes bring back the spirit of the old land? Which of them stirs your heart most? If you're enjoying this journey, hit like and subscribe to keep these stories alive. 10. Smoked venison jerky. The sharp crackle of a campfire once meant more than warmth. It meant preservation, survival, and reverence. In the forests of the upper Midwest, hunters returned home with deer, their bounty destined not for waste, but for wisdom. Strips of lean venison were seasoned with wild herbs, juniper, sage, and smoke, then hung above low embers for hours. The result was smoked venison jerky, tender yet tough, earthy yet sweet, carrying the breath of wood and wind. Among the Lakota and Ojibwe, this wasn't just food, it was a companion. Warriors carried it on journeys. Mothers stored it for the cold moons of winter. Each piece told of a successful hunt and the community it sustained. The act of smoking meat was a ritual of gratitude, where every spark honored the deer's spirit. As refrigeration arrived, the art of jerky making faded into factory lines, its heart stripped away. Yet in native homelands, the fire still burned. Today, artisans return to those roots, drying venison with patience and prayer. When you bite into true venison jerky, you're not just tasting meat, you're tasting endurance, discipline, and the song of smoke that never truly died. 11. Succotash. In the soft light of a colonial hearth, a pot of succotash once simmered golden corn, green lima beans, and a touch of pepper stewing together in a dance of color. The recipe came from the Narragansett people, who taught early settlers how to combine the gifts of the three sisters into one sustaining dish. To them, it was nourishment and gratitude. To the colonists, it was survival. Succotash became a symbol of shared tables, a rare moment when two worlds found harmony through food. Its sweetness from corn, creaminess from beans, and hint of smoke from the fire told a story of resilience. Over time, canned versions and frozen vegetables dulled its soul-turning ceremony into convenience. Yet in native homes, the dish remains a quiet celebration of harvest of land, labor, and legacy. If you ever stir a pot of succotash, remember this: every kernel carries the echo of hands that once planted in faith and hope, believing that the earth would always provide. 12. Johnny cakes. Long before diners flipped pancakes on steel griddles, native women of the eastern woodlands were frying Johnny cakes on hot stones by the river. Made from ground cornmeal, salt, and water, they were golden and crisp at the edges, soft and smoky in the center, simple, sustaining, perfect. When English settlers arrived, they borrowed the recipe, calling it journey cake, a name that carried both distance and gratitude. To the Narragansett and Powhatan, Johnny cakes were more than travel food. They were the taste of endurance. A handful of meal, a splash of river water, and a fire, that's all it took to keep a people moving forward. Centuries later, these humble cakes became breakfast staples across early America, then quietly disappeared beneath stacks of wheat, pancakes, and syrup. But on reservations and homesteads, they never left the griddle. The next time you taste cornmeal crisp in butter, listen closely. You might just hear the whispers of the rivers that first taught America how to eat. 13. Indian fry bread. Born from hardship, Indian fry bread carries both pain and pride. In the 1860s, during the forced relocation known as the Trail of Tears, the Navajo were given only government rations: flour, salt, lard, and water. From these meager supplies, women created something miraculous: a golden round of dough puffed by fire and survival. Fry bread became a lifeline, then a legacy. It fed families when nothing else could, turning suffering into sustenance. Its crispy surface hides deep symbolism, resilience, defiance, and the unbroken spirit of a people who refuse to vanish. Today, fry bread appears at powwows and gatherings across the nation, topped with honey or beans, sweet or savory. Yet it remains a dish of duality, a reminder of oppression, but also of strength. When you bite into its warmth, you taste both the sorrow and the triumph of Native history. And maybe in that moment, you understand food can be both a wound and a healing prayer. 14. Maple syrup harvesting. Long before breakfast tables drowned in store-bought syrup, the Algonquin people tapped the trees of the northern forests to draw out life's sweetest gift. In early spring, when the snow still clung to the roots, families drilled small holes in maple trunks, collecting the sap that flowed like liquid sunlight. Boiled slowly over open fires, it thickened into amber syrup, the first taste of warmth after winter's hunger. For generations, this ritual marked the turning of the seasons. Children laughed as steam rose into the crisp air. Elders told stories of how the Great Spirit sent sweetness to renew the land. The flavor, smoky, woodsy, pure, was more than sugar. It was ceremony. As industries grew, machines replaced the fires, and syrup became commerce instead of communion. But in native maple camps today, the tradition continues. Families still boil sap in iron kettles, letting the scent of smoke and sweetness fill the dawn. Maple syrup began not as a topping, but as gratitude, a golden thread between people and trees. 15. Corn husk tamales native style. Before the word tamale ever reached English ears, the Pueblo and Hopi peoples were wrapping masa dough in corn husks, steaming them gently over hot stones. The filling was simple: beans, squash, or bits of wild game, but the meaning was profound. Each tamale was a parcel of life, sealed in husk and steam, offered back to the earth in thanks. During planting festivals, families made them by the hundreds, laughter and songs filling the air. The corn husks rustled like soft prayers, the aroma mingling with desert sage. When Spanish settlers arrived, they brought new spices and meats, transforming but never erasing the native roots of this dish. In modern kitchens, tamales are celebrated across the Americas, yet few remember where they began, in the hands of indigenous women who understood that wrapping food in leaves was a sacred art. Unfold a true corn husk tamale and you unfold a story of care, community, and continuity that has lasted for 16. Cranberry sauce origins. Long before it appeared beside turkey on Thanksgiving tables, cranberries were medicine dye and spirit food for the Wampanoag people. They called them sesame ash bitter berries with healing power. Women gathered them from marshy bogs in early autumn, their red skins shining like drops of fire against the cold earth. Mixed with wild honey or maple syrup, they became sauces, preserves, and even energy cakes for long journeys. When the English settlers arrived in the early 1600s, it was the Wampanoag who taught them how to sweeten the berry sharpness, pairing them with meats to preserve flavor. That lesson lived on through centuries, transformed into the glossy side dish we know today. Yet beneath every spoonful lies a story of exchange, survival, and gratitude. Modern Thanksgiving often forgets its first teachers, but every ruby red glimmer of cranberry sauce still carries their wisdom that sour and sweet must coexist, that bitterness can be turned into beauty. Next time you taste it, remember what began as medicine became a memory shared across nations. 17. Wild turkey roast picture, the first light of dawn filtering through a forest of oaks and pines. The crack of twigs, the call of a hunter, then silence as smoke begins to curl above a low fire. Wild turkey roast was once the centerpiece of autumn gatherings among many eastern tribes. The bird, strong and wary, was respected as a creature of balance and intelligence. Roasted over glowing coals and basted with herbs, its meat carried the scent of wood smoke and the sweetness of maple or cranberries. For the Cherokee and the Lenape, it symbolized gratitude, a feast shared not for abundance, but for harmony. When European settlers adopted the turkey for their own feasts, they inherited more than a recipe. They inherited a ritual of giving thanks. But as hunting gave way to farming, the wild flavor faded into something tame. Still in the quiet of the forest, true hunters know the taste that once united generations, rich, wild, and sacred. 18. Cornmeal mush and berries. Imagine the soft bubbling of a pot over morning embers, cornmeal thickening into golden mush, steam rising, and the air tinged with sweetness from wild berries. For many Appalachian and southeastern native families, this was breakfast, medicine, and comfort combined. Cornmeal mush and berries blended what the land freely gave: grain from the fields, fruit from the forest, and water from the spring. Eaten warm with honey or maple syrup, it filled the stomach and steadied the heart through long days of labor. To the Creek and Cherokee, it was a mother's dish, simple, nourishing, eternal. As boxed cereals and instant oats replaced tradition, the humble mush vanished from kitchens dismissed as poor man's food. But its story endures in whispered recipes carried by elders who still stir their pots slowly, remembering mornings filled with laughter, not luxury. True comfort doesn't come from the store. It comes from fire, patience, and love stirred into every spoonful. 19. Venison chili with hominy. Before chili became a roadside staple, native hunters were simmering venison with hominy corn kernels, treated with lime to unlock their full power. The result was thick, hearty, and deeply satisfying, the kind of meal that warmed both hunters and herdsmen after long winter hunts. Each bowl of venison chili with hominy carried the spirit of the hunt: smoky meat, roasted peppers, beans, and the golden sweetness of corn. It was sustenance and ceremony, cooked slowly and shared freely. When settlers introduced beef and tomatoes, the recipe evolved, but its roots stayed buried in indigenous soil. Today's chili cook-offs rarely mention that its earliest version came from native firesides, not Texas taverns. Taste the old way once and you'll never forget it, a dish that tells of courage, community, and the deep respect between hunter and land. 20. Campfire corn pudding. Under the flicker of starlight, a simple mix of corn milk and eggs transformed into something close to magic. Campfire corn pudding was a favorite of the Cherokee and other southeastern tribes, sweet, soft, and comforting, baked in clay pots beside the flames. The corn's natural sugars caramelized, creating a golden crust over a creamy heart. In the old camps, this pudding ended the day's labor, a reward for harvest hands, a lullaby in flavor. Elders said its sweetness reminded people of the sun's warmth even in the coldest season. As processed desserts and canned goods took over, the recipe faded into the background, yet it never truly disappeared. Modern native chefs are now reimagining it with wild honeyberries and wood smoke, honoring its roots while bringing it to new tables. Each spoonful is a return to simplicity, proof that comfort and memory often come from the same fire. 21. Navajo tacos. If fry bread was born from survival, Navajo tacos were born from reinvention. In the mid-20th century, native families began topping golden rounds of fried bread with beans, lettuce, cheese, and chili, transforming a painful past into a symbol of cultural pride. What started in small fairs and gatherings soon became a beloved food across the Southwest. Each taco tells a layered story: crisp bread, whispering of hardship, hearty beans of endurance, and bright toppings of renewal. The scent, smoky, spicy, and rich, feels like history folding into celebration. But behind every fair booth and family recipe lies a truth. This dish exists because a people refuse to vanish. Navajo tacos turn government rations into art, oppression into identity. Eat one slowly and you'll taste both struggle and triumph, the full flavor of survival made delicious. If these stories move you, drop a comment below and share which native dish you'd most love to try. 22. Indian cornbread with honey butter. In the glow of an adobe hearth, Indian cornbread baked in heavy cast iron pans, its golden edges crisping while the scent of roasted corn filled the air. Made from ground kernels of red, yellow, and blue corn, this bread wasn't just sustenance, it was a mosaic of the land itself. Every color symbolized something sacred: yellow for the sun, red for life, blue for the sky, and white for purity. When served warm and brushed with wild honey butter, it became a soft hymn to the harvest. Families gathered to eat it alongside beans or stews, children licking their fingers as the butter melted down the sides. To many tribes, cornbread symbolized gratitude, the gift of maize returned to the table with care. As wheat flour and commercial baking mixes swept across the country, this humble bread faded from everyday life. But some native kitchens still rise before dawn to grind their own meal, baking the way their ancestors did, slow, smoky, sacred. One bite and you'll taste more than sweetness. You'll taste sunlight, soil, and the songs of those who first planted corn in American earth. 23. Buffalo Burger Revival. By the mid-1970s, America was rediscovering its wild heart, and with it came the Buffalo Burger. But long before it became a trendy restaurant order, buffalo meat was the lifeblood of the Plains tribes. Every hunt was a ceremony, every bite a blessing. When settlers wiped out the herds, they nearly erased an entire ecosystem and a people's identity. Decades later, native ranchers began to bring the buffalo home. The new burgers weren't fast food. They were acts of restoration. Leaner and richer than beef bison meat, carried a depth of flavor that felt ancient, a taste of grass, wind, and memory. When you bite into a real buffalo burger, you're tasting revival. It's not about nostalgia, it's about healing a wound between people and the land. And every grill that sizzles with bison fat today whispers a small but mighty promise. The buffalo are back, and so are we. 24. Blue corn mush with maple syrup. In the high mesas of the Southwest, morning began with a wooden spoon stirring slowly through a pot of blue corn mush. The mixture, blue cornmeal water and a pinch of ash, thickened into a velvety porridge, both humble and holy. For the Navajo, blue corn symbolized strength and protection. Eaten warm with a drizzle of maple syrup or agave, the mush offered quiet comfort against the chill of dawn. Children dipped their fingers in the pot, elders added herbs for health, and the rhythm of stirring echoed the prayers for balance. Over time, instant breakfasts and processed sugar replaced this sacred start to the day. But among Native families, the tradition persists, sometimes modernized, always meaningful. The taste is unlike anything else, earthy, faintly sweet, and deeply grounding. It's the flavor of home, of sunrise, of generations holding the same bowl in gratitude. 25. Pine needle tea. In the stillness of a winter forest, snow blanketing the earth, a simple cup of pine needle tea once meant life. The Lakota, Cherokee, and Ojibwe brewed it for its healing power, rich in vitamin C, fragrant with the essence of evergreens. Young needles were steeped in boiling water, their aroma filling lodges with a scent both sharp and soothing. More than medicine, it was a ritual of renewal. The tea cleared the lungs, warmed the body, and connected drinkers to the spirit of the forest. Elders would say, "The trees breathe for us, we drink to remember." When factory-made pills replaced herbal knowledge, pine tea nearly vanished. Yet in mountain cabins and native wellness circles, it's returning a quiet rebellion against forgetting. Sip it slowly, and you'll taste the forest itself, clean, alive, eternal. 26. Wild berry cobbler, native twist beneath a blanket of biscuit dough. Wild berries once bubbled into a purple symphony of flavor. Blackberries, choke cherries, and blueberries, each handpicked from sunlit fields, became the heart of a dessert shared at summer gatherings. The cobbler, though later embraced by settlers, began as a native way to preserve fruit and celebrate the harvest. Sweetened with honey instead of sugar and baked over open coals, the aroma drifted across campfires, drawing laughter and stories. Each bite blended tart and sweet, fire and fruit, memory and joy. As modern ovens and canned fillings took over, that wildness faded, but it can still be found in native kitchens where tradition meets invention. Today's native cobblers add sage, cornmeal crusts, or cedar smoke, reminding us that dessert too can be sacred. Taste it and you'll understand. The land has always known how to make something beautiful out of what's fleeting. 27. Corn and sage stuffing. Before box stuffing mixes filled holiday aisles, the aroma of corn and sage stuffing marked sacred feasts across Native communities. Crumbled cornbread was mixed with onions, herbs, and sunflower seeds, then baked inside game birds or clay pots. The sage, fragrant and earthy, was more than seasoning. It was cleansing, believed to carry prayers upward with every breath of steam. This dish symbolized harmony, grain from the fields, herbs from the hills, and hands working together to feed many. The taste was grounding, rich yet humble, with the deep comfort of home. When factory foods replaced ceremony, the old stuffing faded from memory. But now, as indigenous chefs reclaim ancestral recipes, corn and sage stuffing returns to modern tables, carrying with it both spirit and flavor. Each bite is a quiet reminder: food is not just eaten, it's remembered. Your comments keep these memories alive. Share which of these stories brought you back to the old ways. 28. Smoked trout dip. Follow the river upstream where mist clings to the rocks and trout flash like quicksilver beneath the surface. For mountain tribes from the Pacific Northwest to the Great Lakes, trout was a sacred gift, a reminder that the waters would always provide if treated with respect. Smoked trout dip was a modern echo of that ancient trust. The fish was brined in salt and herbs, smoked slowly over alder wood, then flaked into a creamy mix of wild onion herbs and a hint of lemon. In earlier days, this preparation was about preservation, a way to keep food through long winters when the river froze. But it also carried a deeper meaning. The smoke represented spirit, the river represented life, and the act of sharing it represented community. When supermarkets replaced streams, trout lost its holiness. But in Native kitchens today, the dip returns not as a party snack, but as storytelling. Each bite carries the balance of water and fire, of patience and gratitude. Taste it with fresh cornbread, and you'll find something more than flavor. You'll taste continuity. 29. Sunflower seed porridge. In the heartlands where endless fields sway in the wind, the sunflower has always been more than a flower. It was food, medicine, and symbol. The Plains tribes roasted its seeds, grinding them into meal and stirring it into hot water to make a porridge thick and nutty. Sweetened with honey or choke cherry syrup, it filled mornings with energy and warmth. The sunflower followed the sun, and so did the people. Its seeds represented endurance, standing tall even when drought and winds swept the plains bare. Mothers taught their children that eating sunflower porridge meant taking in the light itself. In time, processed cereals replaced the bowl once filled with this sacred dish. Yet in community gatherings, some elders still serve it at dawn, saying prayers to greet the rising Sunday. It's more than breakfast, it's a conversation between earth and sky, a bowl of hope for a new day. 30. Amaranth grain pudding. Before wheat ruled the world, there was amaranth, the tiny crimson seed that sustained ancient Pueblo, Maya, and Aztec peoples. In desert pueblos, women toasted the grains in clay pots, then simmered them slowly with honey and wild berries to create amaranth grain pudding, soft, fragrant, and shimmering like sunlight in a bowl. The pudding wasn't merely dessert, it was ceremony. Amaranth symbolized immortality, its seeds used in offerings for good harvests and strong hearts. The flavor, nutty, subtly sweet, lingered like a hymn of gratitude to the land that gave so much. Colonial bans nearly erased this ancient grain, branding it as pagan, and for centuries it was forgotten. But now it returns in native gardens, health stores, and kitchens, determined to honor the past. When you taste amaranth today, you're tasting resilience, proof that what's sacred may bend, but never break. If these stories stirred your heart, subscribe and share this journey so the wisdom of our ancestors continues to feed the world. As our journey ends, remember, these weren't just recipes. They were prayers passed from fire to fire, from one heartbeat to the next. Every bowl, every bite carried the memory of land struggle and gratitude. If these stories stirred something in you, share them so the wisdom of our ancestors continues to feed the world. And if you'd like to walk with us through more lost chapters of Native food history, like this video, subscribe, and keep the flame alive.